There we go. Welcome to the Spring 23 Open House, Literature at Our House Open House. All right, to those of you who are here, welcome. To those of you who are watching the recording, welcome to you. And we are going to look back at some of the highlights of the year and look forward to what we have in store for next year. And at the end, we'll talk logistics and registration details. But towards the beginning, the first portions, we're going to focus on what is the meat and potatoes of what we do here at Literature at Our House. And I see here, I see some students, I see some parents I know, and maybe a couple of folks that that are new. I want to ask everybody who's here, what are you especially hoping to learn from tonight? What are you hoping to learn from tonight? Are you hoping to hear more about the curriculum as a whole? Are you hoping to hear about some of the highlights? Are you hoping to know what the book lists are for next year? Are you wanting to see the faces of teachers? So what are you hoping for from tonight? If you want to share anything like that in the chat, feel free to. Now, we are going to have two blocks of content for you. First, we're going to look back, and I and Mrs. Tonya Fingerhut and Mrs. Rachel Miner will talk a little bit about what we've done, a couple of highlights from the year, and then we will look forward and talk a little bit about what we have in store. And if you're just coming in, if you want to share anything that you're hoping to learn from tonight, please feel free to put that in the chat. So quick, brief introductions. If you don't know me, my name is Luke Travers. This is the 10th year. No, yes, 10th. Next year will be the 11th year I've been doing Literature at Our House. So I've been loving it the whole time. That's why I've been doing it the whole time. And I look forward to keep having these literature courses a part of my life for years to come. I want to introduce Rachel.
You're better at remembering than I am. So I'm Rachel Miner. How many years now?
I want to say at least 5, maybe 6.
I think it's at least that.
Okay.
And then before that, there were the rounds of being a parent and having my son take Luke's classes. I was teaching the science class. Yeah. So I teach the upper elementary class, and I've been loving it too. My background's in nursing. Right now, I work at a literacy center that's also a school. So keep really busy.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. Tonya, would you like to introduce yourself very briefly?
Sure. So I'm Tonya Fingerhut, and I've been working with Luke since I moved to North Carolina about 3 years ago.
And even before that, how long, when did we first meet? When did I step into your literature classroom?
Yeah. Oh, gosh, my youngest son was 8 years old when I first met you, and so now he's 20 something. So
yeah, about at least 15 years ago. Yeah.
Yes. So I homeschooled my boys when I was in California, which is where I lived for 18 years. And for 5 of those years, I worked at a private school, which is where I met Luke. And when I homeschooled my boys, again, when they were in their high school years, that's when I met Rachel. I got to know her. And so I've been homeschooling, and at the private school, I taught literature, math, and writing. And I teach the current upper elementary writing workshop. And next year, I am hoping to teach the lower elementary class for literature and writing workshop. So nice to meet everybody.
Hey, thank you, Tonya. Okay, so if you're just coming in, if you'd like to put in the chat what you're hoping to get from tonight, please do so. And you say, Kathy, you put down you're looking forward to hearing what the kids have been up to. And Jeannie, you're interested in hearing more about the high school level, the book list, etc. All right, I'll keep those things in mind. And what we're going to do is, as we go through, if there are any questions, I invite you to put those in the chat, and we're going to have a designated question period right after we kind of look back at this past year. And then afterwards, we'll have another little question period. But if there's a question you have on your mind, put it in the chat. That will be a good way for you to just have it documented there so that we can get to it. So let's look back, and I'm going to start, and I'm going to share a couple of artworks from the elementary art appreciation, which is 1st through 6th grade. All these students gathered together, all these different levels, and it just feels like it works really well. because what we do is we read the artwork together, we describe and piece together the stories, and then we personally connect to what's going on. One of my highlights, and Ari, I see you there from the art appreciation class, and maybe you can, if you have any highlights, Ari, please feel free to share. One for me was this painting where we looked at this girl who looks like she's at this big kind of easel with these huge brushes, and we saw that she is kind of taking over her dad's studio. And the way we personally connected to this is empathizing with her. When have you borrowed an adult's tools to do something that interests you? And so we got lots of interesting stories about cooking and going or some car work. So that's one. And then a little bit more adult artwork, but one that just blended in well with all the grade levels. This artwork is of the philosopher Diogenes, who was a cynic, who kept going around looking for the truth in people and never believed he would find it. And he lived in a tub away, and we see him being very grumpy. And we ask the question here, when have you felt grumpy towards the world? I had one 7-year-old say, I feel grumpy towards the world this week. I've been sick all week and I just don't want to talk to anybody. And then I had another student, a 12-year-old, say, I don't really like his attitude towards the world. And so he was grasping a different kind of perspective or approach to looking at the world from this story. But that's just a quick little indication of how the art appreciation for elementary students works. And if you'd like to know more, put a question in the chat, and I'll get to it. Next, I want to hand it off to Mrs. Miner, to Rachel.
Yay! So we started the year with a book of 3, super adventure. And students got to enjoy meeting Taryn and his super impetuous nature of grabbing up a poker and having, that he could do it all. And we moved from there. We did Hatchets, which was definitely a favorite. Students were interested in being able to picture how this person, this young person handles being stranded in the wilderness. King Arthur so far was not the favorite book in class. Even though students wrote their own Knight's Tale, it was not a favorite. But we did have a lot of fun with it. And we talked a lot about, like, okay, when a book is not your favorite, what can you still get out of it? And what are the kinds of things that are not your favorite? What are you noticing so that you can notice that in the future, right? And be like, I'm not going to pick that one off the shelf. And students wrote some really, really interesting Knight's Tales, of their own knight, and what their character would do that matched the code of chivalry. And then we did Secret Garden, which I think has been so far the most kind of enriching of the novels, as far as students really reflecting, talking about I skipped Q for Treason because I have it behind. So Q for Treason, super adventure story of main characters who are able to really rise to an occasion where they did not have the training for that. And students just loved all the, like, wait, where's it gonna go next? What's gonna happen? And then it was really exciting. So students enjoyed that a great deal, set in Elizabethan England. And then Secret Garden, I think seeing a character who starts out and is very, very unlikable. And then also students wrote about what they like about themselves, because in this book we have another character turn to this main character and say, well, do you like yourself? And there's this like pause of like, well, not really. And what students wrote about liking themselves and what about themselves they liked was I think especially powerful. Right now we're doing Eleanor, which is not on this. It's one of our optional, and then all of our courses we have optional and more books that students are enjoying learning about Eleanor of Aquitaine. And it's really, really fun. It's different in that it's not telling the story through enacting it. It's more of like, this happened and this happened. But Eleanor of Aquitaine leads such a spectacular, thrilling, exciting life. And as of today in class, there were a lot of like, wow, this happened. Even though it's not all dramatized, it's still so dramatic what she lives through as a character. And we are also going to be doing from the mixed up files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler and Mrs. Fingerhut, who is amazing and is my substitute, is also going to be finishing off the year with, because I will be on vacation. So she's going to be a substitute for the last 2 weeks of the year and choosing some other fun things. But she was also our writing workshop teacher throughout this year. So more highlights for you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about what we did in the writing workshop. My role is primarily Rachel's support. So whenever she assigns a writing prompt related to the literature that she's reading with the students, then I have the students in my class work in those prompts. And in between prompts, we have time. We can do some other things. And so let me just share what we did. Since we were studying the medieval period, I had the students look at some Anglo-Saxon riddles, and then they had to go and write their own Anglo-Saxon like riddles and turn them in, and we had to guess what the answers were. That was really interesting. Because of the King Arthur stories, there's lots of adventures. The students wrote their own King Arthur, like knight-like adventure. They also wrote like a book of 3 adventure using some of those characters. That was fun to do. They oftentimes, students ask this a lot, when it comes to Halloween, they really enjoy writing Halloween stories. It's just a lot of fun. And since Shakespeare was mentioned in the Queue of 3, I showed the students a little clip of a character called Oberon. Now he's from the crazy one, which I call the Midsummer Night's Dream, and he gave a revenge speech. So the students were to write a revenge speech of their own in the style of Shakespeare. So that was kind of fun to do too. The idea of the tabletop turned came up somewhere in our discussions or in the reading, and the students then wrote a story in which the tabletop turned. So the roles of the characters had to reverse in some way, or the situation had to reverse in some way. So that was fun. The students also created their own fairy tales. Now, as you know, there's lots of fairy tales from Europe in the medieval times. They could create their own fairy tale either by imitating one that was familiar to them or by just creating their own. And I was just really impressed with what some of the students came up with. It was just fun. I'm always surprised, I'm always surprised with what the students are able to do and come up with, and it's a lot of fun. Currently, it's kind of chaotic because the students are doing a group story and they are creating their own fictional world. And tomorrow they are going to introduce their character and we are going to get to know each other's character. And then they're going to start writing their chapter book and write their stories, and they can use other characters from their peers and use them in their story as well. So I think this would be a lot of fun. They've been trying to connect with each other outside of class, and it's just been a big joy. So that's my story for the writing workshop. And when I do it with the lower elementary next year, it'll be something similar, just doing some interesting things that relate to what's of interest to the kids personally, what's related to the stories, what's related to the time period, and so on.
All right. Thank you, Tonya. Okay. So I see a couple questions here that are related to a little bit to the upper elementary. Maybe we can quickly answer those. So Ari, if you're asking, we were wondering about grammar lessons and incorporating grammar with writing. And I'll give a quick answer to that. And Tonya and Rachel, if you want to have a very quick follow-up to that. So when I assign assignments in the literature class, not in the writing workshop, in a literature class, I don't pay attention to grammar and so forth. What we do is the focus is on the content, and we bring the students bring the assignments to the class, and we share their writing in class with each other anonymously. So we read their writing and we comment on it and we highlight what we like about the writing. And often what happens is if there are grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes, it becomes apparent because we have other students reading that out loud. And so the student who's written that assignment is like, whoa, they stumbled over that sentence. And so they become more aware of the need and the value of having good grammar and good spelling in their writing. But the focus isn't on correcting and giving feedback on that. And the writing workshop, maybe it's a little bit more where we're thinking we want to achieve more clarity. We do a second draft or something to that effect. Tonya, Rachel, do you want to add in something real quick about that?
I was able to focus on grammar a little more easily when I was the teacher in the class. It's a little harder to address grammar. Sometimes I don't get assignments returned to me until right before class begins. So it's a little harder for me to judge how to handle that. And I do try to, at least with some of the basics, just with some basic punctuation, how to handle dialogue. But yeah, it would be helpful, I think, to have a grammar workbook or something for children to work on.
And here you're speaking, Tonya, you're speaking especially of lower elementary, correct?
Well,
right, upper elementary as well?
Lower elementary. I'm just saying for the lower elementary, I could do a little bit more because in the class, I work on the grammar with the children in class more.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tonya. One quick question. Oh, go ahead, Rachel.
I was just gonna, agree, right? That in the literature class, the focus in class is very much on sharing the writing as part of enhancing the literature. And we're not taking the time to diagram sentences or to correct writing kind of things, but that I've seen it multiple times that the sharing does, especially over the year, compound to help students usually write better and better because they're seeing their writing in front on the page and they're hearing someone else read it.
Yeah, and I think that's true across all levels from lower elementary to high school. Danielle, you're asking about the pace of reading for the upper elementary and the junior high. Real quick pace of reading. Amount of reading between classes for junior high is about 15, maybe max 20 pages between classes. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and then 15 to 20 pages between. Rachel, is it about that, 10 to 15 or so?
Depends on the book. We've got books where it's actually more like 30 pages, but the writing is like bigger. So it's the goal is that it's going to take somewhere around 20 minutes. It might be occasionally half hour, but around 20 minutes of reading homework time.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I want to share a couple quick highlights from the junior high this past year. And the highlights are just two quick anecdotes. One from The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was our big novel. We usually have one big novel in the junior high class, and all these works are adult-oriented works, but they delve with topics and themes that are accessible to a junior high student. So romantic love is what's featured in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And we got to the ending, and the ending was not what many of the students expected. And I got a lot of anger. And I was very happy to get a lot of anger. I had the students write a response and say, okay, what did you think of the ending? Explain why. I got long responses, including 2 essays. And all I wanted was a paragraph. But it was the opportunity for them to delve into why they were feeling strongly about what happened at the end. And it was pleasing to me to see these strong reactions because it suggested that they spent this time going through this 300-odd page novel that's a French novel from the 19th century with such a complex plot and such complex characterization and themes that are kind of right at the limit that they're just kind of tasting as a 13-year-old. And so they were really starting to grasp it, to care about it, and they cared about it enough to be angry at the ending. One quick other anecdote happened actually today. And this is one thing that I love about the development over the course of the year is that each of these works are not standalone. We keep building by integrating them with the previous work. So the characters stay with us. We did the miracle worker the first of the year, and those characters stay with us as we compare. It's like getting to know these people, and they stay a part of your life. So we today, just kind of impromptu, we were at the scene of Cyrano de Bergerac, where Christian, the handsome but witless young man who's in love with Roxanne, tries to woo her, and he completely, utterly fails. And the students were saying, that's very different than Phoebus, the equally handsome but insincere. And he has a kind of wit because he memorizes other people's poetry. And so they were starting to see a contrast between Christian and Phoebus. They're both handsome, but Phoebus is a total fake and Christian is actually sincere. So the growing development and understanding of these characters contributes to a deeper understanding as the year goes on. And then, yeah, all these books. If anybody has, I encourage you, if you want to take screenshots, if that's of these books, you're welcome to. That might be helpful. But and if you have any questions about any of the particular ones, I just want to give you a taste of some of the stuff that I'm excited about. A high school seminar. The high school seminar, we've had the students do 2 presentations so far. And they're going to do one more presentation. And it's a combination of class discussion, and sometimes a little bit more free flowing, sometimes led, more directed with questions, and also occasional private tutorial sessions. And the tutorial sessions help set up the presentations that the students give. The seminar style is meant for the students to start to create content for each other. And one of the things that I did something crazy this year that I didn't expect to do, I was nervous about it. I did a lot of Shakespeare. I don't really, often Shakespeare is tough, but we did Othello and it worked okay. And so then I invited students, I gave them an option about what to do. Maybe they could compare and contrast, integrate Othello with Jane Eyre and Family Happiness in some way, or they could read the first 2 acts of another Shakespeare play and write a recommendation or not based on just the first 2 acts. So we got a lot of students who voluntarily read more Shakespeare, but just the first 2 acts, just to get a sense of it, and shared that experience so far. One quick story, just yesterday, this is a fun one. We did The Wild Duck, which is a Henrik Ibsen play about idealism and how it might go wrong. And we read the final act, and in a similar way that the junior high students were kind of angry at the ending of Hunchback of Notre Dame, I got a vehement revolt among my high school students. And so we just ditched all the material I prepared and talked about the final act. And they just basically led a discussion about what exactly happened in this final act and why did they not like it so much. And then Thursday, we're going to try to understand it from Ibsen's perspective and why he did what he was doing. So just to give you a taste of the how things kind of went. Loved doing Jane Eyre. That's one of my favorite novels. And I was kind of surprised that the students, even though they weren't too fond about Family Happiness, wasn't too excited about St. Joan, it's amazing how these characters stick with them. Tomorrow I'm going to get several assignments about comparing characters from The Wild Duck to characters from these previous works. So these archetypes, these ideas embodied by these characters stay with them as they go through the year. And that is a way in which maybe in life, as they go forward, that they keep a conceptual hold of different kinds of human beings in their minds and their souls to know what they want to be and what they want from others. Okay. So, any questions looking back? Any questions looking back? And then I see Tony. Yeah, you're going to talk about looking forward in a moment. So we already addressed a couple questions. Hi, if you're just coming in, feel free to put in the chat anything that you're hoping to gain from tonight. We've spent the first, oh, good, we're doing pretty good time. 27 minutes here looking back at some of the highlights of the year. And now, let's look forward. All right, and Danielle, you're asking, does the same teacher do the writing workshop for all levels? Oh, so nope, different teachers. And we'll talk a little bit about that now. All right. Looking forward, I want to hand it over to Tonya for the lower elementary literature that we're proposing for next year. Oh, you're muted, Tonya.
Okay, so I'll be focusing on stories related to American history. Not all of the stories that we read will be such stories. I probably have more here than we'll be able to do. I'm still kind of figuring what the curriculum should be. And what generally I'll do for the first day is I'll introduce some context of the world, the literary world that the children will be reading. And then I'll read the first chapter out loud. And I want the children to be immersed in that world, and telling it in a voice for them will be very helpful. And then I'll assign either 1 to 2 chapters a night for homework. Then we come back so we meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So when we meet on Wednesday, we just talk about that chapter, the chapters that were assigned for homework. And the children are not to read ahead. And we'll discuss the characters, we'll discuss their motivations, we'll share in the fears that the characters are feeling. We'll understand the world a little better and the trials that the characters are feeling. And we'll do this for the whole novel. This might be kind of a slower pace than other programs, but that's very, very deliberate on our part. And near the end of the novel, I'll assign a writing assignment. Now with my younger students, I will help them through how to write and what I expect and how to say things, how to spell things. I also have a writing workshop, so they have some more time to sit and work and write with me and do the other things. Like I mentioned with the upper elementary, I'll be doing that with the lower elementary as well. And the other thing we do near the end of a novel is introduce a poem that ties in with the work in some way. And then we'll do like a character award near the end, and the kids get to nominate like what their favorite book is, who their favorite character is, who's the funniest character, and they have a lot of fun with that. And that's a nice way to close the book. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the pace is like. And with these novels, I kind of want to have a good mix of novels that are easier to read and maybe have the kids start reading novels in earnest, especially like October, November, somewhere in there. Now the students who do, if what I have assigned is a little too advanced, then I recommend whatever the family is able to do to support that child so that that child feels prepared to discuss the story when they come. That could mean maybe there are times when the parent needs to read to the child themselves, or the child can listen to an audio version if they like. And I would say one thing I hope is that the child's so interested in the story that they really want to read these stories. That would be the biggest factor, getting the motivation. The first 2 here are going to be a little bit more on the simpler side. Let me just kind of go through what I think are interesting about these stories. You know, we're going to focus on the classics. We're going to focus on those that have timeless themes and those that have those wonderful characters that we all love. Riding the Pony Express might be a nice one to start with. It's very fast paced. It's very exciting. It's a story about a boy whose father has one of the most dangerous jobs at the time, and he's a Pony Express rider. And what kind of life does that child have? We'll find out. Sarah, Plain and Tall is a very endearing story. It's about a husband who's looking for a new wife after his wife had died some time ago. Just to give a little point of interest that might be a really beautiful moment is that the oldest daughter remembers the mother and father singing when her mother was still alive. But since the mother died, he hadn't sung. So she writes to Sarah. Sarah is the woman who might be interested in coming out for a visit, and asks her, do you know how to sing? In a letter. And we'll find out what happens with that relationship. Farmer Boy is a story. There's lots of details, lots of interesting things happen in this story. I really thought what was touching in this story was the relationship Almanzo has with his father near the end. Almanzo is the youngest of 5, and how that father treats his children. He's a certain kind of man, he's a certain kind of father. There's definitely some really good qualities, but he changes how he treats Almanzo near the end of the story, and there's a reason for that. Now I have on here, you see the Song of Hiawatha, the Indian in there. That's actually a poem, an epic poem by Longfellow. I plan to read the poem and then find selections that I think the students will find interesting to read. With something like that, I might just do the reading in class with the students so we can understand what's happening as we go along. And that might be a nice change of pace from reading the novels. The Sign of the Beaver is an interesting story that takes place during colonial times. And there's a boy who kind of comes to an unexpected situation where he has to learn how to survive on his own. And he comes across another boy, and there's some mistrust. So what happens between those two children will be interesting to uncover. Pollyanna is a really joyful story. It's also a really long one. So I may switch that out and find something a little more current and a little shorter if this seems a little overwhelming. No, I'm going to be flexible. I'll keep other books on hand. This age level kind of needs a little variety, doesn't it? And at the end there, I put the 2 Little Pilgrim's Progress mainly as a placeholder for some short stories. I love Frances Hodgson Burnett. The 2 of her novels are used in the upper elementary, but she does have some marvelous little stories. So I'm going to keep my eye out on this story and other ones for some nice varieties. We might have some short stories in this class as well. And let's see, is there anything else I need to say? I think that's all I have. If you have questions, please just let me know in the chat. Okay.
Thank you very much, Tonya. I'm excited for this class to happen, and any student who gets to spend time with you is really fortunate. All right, let's go now to the upper elementary. And Rachel, would you like to share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So the process for class is super similar. One of the things that we tend to do a bunch of in the upper elementary class is name game. It's just really, really, really popular. So when we start getting books that, after we know like more than 2 characters, right? When we start knowing more characters, we'll have a list of the names, and then we'll give a hint, and the students have to put in the chat who they think we're talking about, and then they see if they're right, and they also will give hints to each other, right? So it doesn't. I don't have to give all the hints, but it's a super popular way of helping them notice. Did I get it? Was I able to like follow along? And I know all these characters, which for some of these stories becomes incredibly valuable for making sure. We also will use character lists where they write out the character and they write out a 5-word, it's something brief, but a description of that character so that as they're going through, they can reference it. And that will usually, we like them to use that as their bookmark. Okay, cool. So again, the North American-ish year, right? Anne of Green Gables is Canada, but ish. These these books all have a lot of adventure, a lot of moving parts. I do tend to hear, especially with Fever 1793, that there's a lots of sad things happening, and students really get involved with these characters, and it's really I think a little bit more easy to relate to these particular books than the year we're just finishing, where so many of the characters are knights in shining armor who are trying to do the chivalry thing, and they're weird. That's not the way the thing should be. Or many of the other books that get more even the fantastical ones, from Book of Three, where there's magic, but we managed to relate to all the characters. I think this particular year is the year as far as the rotation. I think the American or North American books are particularly relatable for students. I will say that Anne of Green Gables is one of my favorite books of all time. I get a little bit yippee skippy happy with it, and I think it's a little bit contagious, and any student who does not love Anne of Green Gables just has to put up with me, because I really, really, really love that book. But I'd be glad to talk more about any of them. And it looks like you got a question, Tony, if you want to answer that in the chat. Any questions for upper elementary, I will also look for in the chat. Be glad to answer.
Thank you, Rachel. I will chime in here very quickly that Tony is focusing on the lower elementary for next year, and I'm considering going back to my upper elementary roots and doing the writing workshop for the upper elementary. So I think it'll depend on interest, and it'll depend on how my schedule pans out. So I used to teach the upper elementary, so I'm very familiar with a lot of the books. I think all these books I've taught before a few times. So I might be doing the upper elementary writing workshop next year, but that's TBD. What I will be doing is the junior high literature class, and the junior high literature class, again, on the 3-year rotation basis that we have, where we're focusing primarily on American literature, but that's not the sole standard by which we're picking these books. The primary standard by which we're picking these books are, does it have a compelling plot? Does it relate to the students' lives? And that's especially, understanding those two things is especially the case for the classics, where there are a lot of classics out there that are classics that are boring. And we want to make sure that the students fall in love with literature. So what we have on tap, and I'll indicate which ones are for sure and which ones are, sometimes I do, sometimes I change things up. It varies. Sometimes I like to experiment. There's some that are tried and true that over the 10 years I've been doing this, and I think 18 years I've been teaching literature, that students have always loved. And that first one for that is To Kill a Mockingbird. And so that's one I absolutely love to teach, a story about empathy and how to empathize. Such a powerful theme, so powerfully dramatized, and such a compelling story. Then Inherit the Wind. And here we're getting into battles of ideas, creationism versus Darwinism, and how that can come up in a trial. And so we're getting into bigger philosophical, social issues that are at stake. Shane is a fantastic one of, what does hero worship mean? What does it mean to admire somebody? And it's such a compelling plot, such an enjoyable story. We'll also delve into some Nathaniel Hawthorne short stories like Young Goodman Brown. And these are not the ones that the students are going to be most excited about, but they're going to be compelling enough that they're going to stick. And as I've mentioned before, the characters are powerful enough that they're going to stay with those students as we go through the year, and there'll be good comparison pieces for those. There's like a minister who goes around wearing a black veil all the time, and it's so creepy and strange. But it's a powerful indication of a certain kind of person, a certain kind of worldview. I love Henrik Ibsen, and so we might do An Enemy of the People, which is another one of the, similar to Inherit the Wind, a story of social conflict between big ideas, the collective versus the individual. And that's the one with very dramatic that we might do. And the big novel that we will likely do is Les Miserables. We might do something else, but Les Miserables is one of the classics. What we do is we read not the 1500-page version here, but an abridged version that does not abridge too much of the plot. I remember teaching 15 years ago an abridged version that it was 190 pages long, 190 pages long from a 1500-page novel, and that was a disaster. This version that we have here is about 800 pages long. It is a mammoth undertaking, but it preserves this kind of great constellation of characters that intertwine, and you just feel like, wow, everything just falls into place, and it's such a satisfying read with such compelling characters. I leave flexibility for some of the selections based on the makeup of the class and based on how the class goes. If the class skews younger, then we might do something different. If the class is a little bit more mature in their reading, then we might do something different. But that's one reason why we like to have just a little bit of flexibility in what we're doing. So that's the junior high. Now, I know a couple of you have mentioned in the chat that you're especially interested in the high school. And here's what we have for the high school. High school, again, American history year primarily, but not exclusively. And there are some novels that we will definitely be doing and some works that, again, we will see how the year progresses. The Scarlet Letter, such a work of romanticism, of grand characters making difficult decisions. The language is challenging for this novel, so it might be one that we read a little bit into the year. I think we'll start with Fahrenheit 451, dystopian sci-fi classic that the language is a little bit more contemporary and we can get into it. And it's got a lot of little connections to today. Everybody in Fahrenheit 451, written, I think, in the 1950s, is on a screen. So there are a lot of interesting parallels that students might be able to draw in looking at visions of society. The play The Crucible, of course, about the Salem witch trials, and The Great Gatsby. It's an American classic. It's one that you'll find in all these high school curriculums, but it's one that is really compelling because I think it shows a kind of character that you don't want to be in Gatsby. And it's a great combination to go along with a novel that we'll very likely do, The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, which is about the independent architect who takes on conventional approaches to architecture. We might throw in The Animal Farm in there for another kind of dystopian view compared to Fahrenheit 451. And then we'll see what we will do. We might throw in a couple more. Of course, there will be poetry. I think one thing that we're going to do is we're going to spend a lot of time with Edna St. Vincent Millay's poetry, and we might even do the students might even pick a poem and do a presentation on that poem. Of course, like this year, there will be 3 periods of where we take the week off and we just do private tutorials in preparation for the students to deliver a presentation to the rest of the class. All right, so that's the high school. Now, before I go into like the schedule, I want to see if there are any other questions here. And Nyla, thank you for that observation. So these books that we pick out for the high school and the junior high and for the other levels I've tried them out over the years. and some have stuck and some haven't. The ones that I teach that I have as a core, the ones that have really stuck. And then occasionally we try something else out, just to vary it and see what's going on. All right. So Danielle, you're asking, do I teach the writing workshop? So I'm very likely going to have a writing workshop for the junior high, and I'd be teaching that. And the high school class, probably not a writing workshop. But what I like to do with the high school class, because you'll notice that the grade levels here are high school recommended 10th through 12th grade, the junior high recommended 7th or 9th grade, and the upper elementary 4th to 6th, and the lower elementary 2nd and 3rd grade. That can be a wide range. That can be a wide range. And maybe even like this year in the high school, I had several 10th graders and several 12th graders. And so to kind of help a little bit with that gap, I like to offer private tutorial where the student gets a chance to chat with me specifically about what's going on and to get help with the writing assignments. And I've done that with the junior high too. So if there isn't a strong interest in a writing workshop, I might do private tutorials. Okay, so the schedule. I want to share right now in the chat very quickly if you did not get this at the beginning of our session, this is a survey that is proposing the scheduled times. And if you're interested in registering for the classes, you can let us know there whether that time works for you. We are essentially going to keep the schedule that we have had this past year. There are going to be a couple little tweaks, and I'll mention that to you. These are the proposed times, the likely times, but not fully set. And maybe for some where we're not quite sure yet, or we need to see, we need to have a minimum number to fill class, and a different time might help, we might do that. So for the lower elementary, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Antonia, about how long is a class? 35 minutes, is that it?
Yes, for both the writing workshop and the class will be 35 minutes for my level.
Okay, got it. 35 minutes for those. The upper elementary literature, same time as this past year or this year, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And Rachel, that's about 40 minutes, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. And then the writing workshop, I don't have a time set. That's going to depend on several factors. One, interest. Two, my schedule and whether I'll be able to fit it in. But if there's overwhelming, like everybody say, hey, Luke, let's do a writing workshop, I can be persuaded. I can be persuaded. Elementary art appreciation. So this is that I did not have a preview of that, but you got a taste of it at the beginning of our open house. Same time, same place, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. Pacific on Fridays. I might have a second session. So this is for 1st grade through 6th grade. Junior high literature, same time, same place as this past year, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Pacific. Junior high writing workshop, TBD. If there's interest in that, maybe on Tuesdays at later in the afternoon, but that's up in the air right now. I might do a junior high art appreciation. I did one 2 years ago, and I might do another one this year. We'll see how much interest there is there. One quick word about the junior high art appreciation. In a similar way that the writing workshop is integrated or tied to the literature class, the art appreciation is tied to the literature class. So the artworks we spend time with integrate with the characters and the themes of the novels and plays we read. The high school literature seminar, same time as this year, Tuesday, Thursday. The R stands for Thursday. Tuesday, Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And then high school tutorials, literature tutorials. I want to indicate these tutorials are not just for students that are enrolled in the literature class. I've been doing tutorials for students who could not attend the live high school literature classes. And what they do is they watch the recordings and then they meet with me once a week to discuss. So they have some time with me. Also, I have several high school literature students who, for one reason or another, they've done the 3 years of content essentially that I've offered for the high school literature, and they're still around. They want more for whatever reason. And so if they're interested in some kind of private directed study, that's something that I'd offer. Okay. So as just want to reemphasize, this is not completely set in stone. I'll tell you when it will be set in stone. It's got one thing that will help it be set in stone are your answers to the survey. And I'm gonna give some dates in a moment, but before this, I want to take a look at the questions here. Kathy, you've got a junior high art appreciation only open to those enrolled in the literature class. You know, I don't think so. I think if there was a student who wasn't enrolled in the literature class but wanted to do junior high art appreciation, I was offering it. Yeah, I would maybe caution that maybe there would be references or connections that were made that that I would make assume to the whole class, assuming that they were part of the literature class. But if there was a student that wanted to be, I don't think I'd recommend it highly. But the focus is on the art. The focus is on the art. Jeannie, are this high school literature classes? Oh, high school literature classes are, thanks for, technically 50 minutes. 50 minutes. Sometimes I go over a couple minutes. But I try to keep it to 50 minutes. The junior high literature class, I try to keep it to 45 minutes. Sometimes I go over 40 to like 50 minutes. So a little bit longer than the upper elementary. Mariana, okay, so you're asking how long are seminars? Yeah, 50 minutes. What I am especially conscious of is that they're usually, and maybe you can correct me, parents, that classes are often like an hour block, and you need some time between classes to like get off and get away from the screen and go for a walk or go to the bathroom or drink coffee or something or other. So we never ever like go over an hour or anything like that. Okay, Stephen, what is the elementary art appreciation and UE writing workshop, elementary level? So Stephen, I'm going to recommend, I'm going to send out the recording so you can get like the full spiel of everything, but just a quick version. Elementary art appreciation, 1st through 6th grade, we're learning to read artworks as if they're stories and identify a theme that we personally connect to. The upper elementary writing workshop is an additional writing component to the literature class. All right, now, next steps. For current families or for families that are interested, figuring out placement of the students will be something that we'll coordinate by email. And then after that, registration for current families. Current families will have the opportunity to register first, and that will happen after spring break. We have spring break next week, and then when we come back from spring break, April 5th through April 10th will be the opportunity for current families to register, so that if, I don't know, a class fills up or something. Then, for all of the families open to all, April 11th, registration day on April 11th. I'm going to put that survey link one more time in the chat right here. And then I'm going to ask if there are any more questions or thoughts or stories that you want to tell, or anybody who's here. I see a couple of you who are here who are students or parents of students, have any anecdotes or anything that you want to share. Floor is open. We got 3 minutes. All right, we did a good time.
Luke Travers, I love your class.
Aw. You can say anything you want. You got any more? Got a follow up to that?
The appreciation class. I love how to answer the questions. They're really creative drawings.
Oh, so you love the artworks and you love the questions that we answer. Thank you.
I'm
you.
part of the junior high literature class. My favorite part of the class is George, your cat. Learning. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, George couldn't make it tonight. She's polishing off her third dinner. Okay, Ariv, looking forward to new books and art. Rachel, Tonya, any last words?
No, looking forward to it.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everybody next year. And please let me know if you have any questions. I know with the younger families with younger children, there could be just a lot more to talk about and figure out.
Tonya, do you want to put your email in the chat real quick? And Rachel, if you want to do that too. But in general, if anybody wants to email me, I'm going to put my email. If anybody wants to email me, I'm happy to direct things. LukeTravers@gmail.com. All right, everybody. Tonya, it's been a pleasure working with you again this year. Rachel, what is it? You're 6, 7, I don't know, 5?
It's up there, right? Because I've gone through it and the whole thing twice, so I don't know, 6, 7, yeah.
Right. And thank you, Georgina. Appreciate that. All right, everybody. Have a good evening. Those of you watching the video, we appreciate you too. And if you have any questions, let us know. Bye-bye, everybody.